Milk paint is an eco-friendly, non-toxic paint made from simple ingredients like milk, protein, lime, and pigment. It is a perfect paint for achieving that rustic, chippy, or matte finish with lots of unique texture. It works on wood, metal, and even glass. In today's video, we're going to be looking at two popular brands of milk paint, Fusion and Sweet Pickins. Let's look at some different techniques and talk about some things that you need to think about if you want to use milk paint. Milk paint comes in a powder form and you mix it with water. Now you're going to want to make sure that as you're mixing, you're only doing a little bit at a time and getting the consistency that you really want. A lot of times you will hear people say that you're looking for a melted milkshake. I also like to think of it as pancake batter. Fusion milk paint has a contemporary color palette. It's a lot of soft pastels, muted tones. These are going to be the kinds of paints you're going to want to use if you're looking for more modern, contemporary style in your projects. Sweet Pickins, on the other hand, is ideal for that more rustic, time-worn, and vintage vibe. There is a lot more bold and classic shades. There is a vintage twist to a lot of those colors. And ultimately, it's really going to be more about what you want because you can mix both of them if you are looking for a color that they don't have available in their lines. Another thing you're going to want to think about is your brushes. Make sure you're using cheap brushes. Chip brushes are great. I also use some of my older brushes. Milk paint dries quickly and can harden brush bristles if not cleaned immediately, potentially damaging high-end brushes. In many cases, you'll intentionally want to create imperfections like streaks or texture, so a pricier brush might not even be necessary for achieving these kinds of effects. Using good quality, budget-friendly brushes gives you the freedom to experiment without worrying about wear and tear on your expensive brushes. To get started, you're going to want a measuring tool, disposable container, and some sort of mixing tool. I've typically used a measuring spoon, but for today's video, I'm going to be using a scale. The reason I'm doing this is because I am trying to use the end of these little samples that I have, and so I figured it'd be easier to figure out how much I have left and then match the amount of water to that. I chose 4 colors for today's video, 2 from Sweet Pickins and 2 from Fusion. And what I'm doing right now is measuring out a bit of each one of them, and then I'm going to come back and match that same amount and I have it measured, or the scale is set up to measure fluid ounces. When I did the powder originally, I actually was writing the amount that I had of each of those powders on the cup and also the name of the color on the cup so I wouldn't mess it up later. Once everything is measured out, I mix my water and powder together using a hand mixer or an immersion blender. You can also use like a fork or a spoon. I find sometimes that using the immersion blender gives my milk paint a lot of a foamy texture, like a lot of bubbles, and I'm not a huge fan of it. But I broke 2 hand mixers in filming today's video, so here we are. Let's do a comparison. I have these 2 small chunky risers that I made and stained myself about a year ago. One of them we're going to use Hotel Robe, which is a fusion paint color. It is a white color. And on the other one, we're going to use the color Creamy by Sweet Pickins. As you can see, I am just brushing it on. I am not worried about brush strokes. I am not worried about full coverage. Get creative and really allow yourself to be okay with the unique textures you're going to get, the differences you're going to get. I mean, that's the purpose of using milk paint, in my opinion. With that said, if you were to use a bonding agent, which I have never used, so I can't really comment on the effectiveness of it or anything, but I do know that there are some bonding agents you can add to this milk paint to give it more of that matte finish that does not have the same kind of chippiness. The reason people love milk paint is the matte coverage over some of the other lines that might have a little bit more of a sheen. So if that's what you're going for, then you definitely want to use milk paint for that purpose. However, when I use milk paint, I like the chippiness, I like the texture, so that's why I tend to do it this way. There are several techniques that you can use with milk paint. Some of the things you want to have close by are a heat gun and a misting bottle. One of the things that I really love to do is see how that heat gun changes the effect of the milk paint. So when you let it dry by itself versus when you use a heat gun, you are going to achieve different types of texture, of chippiness, various kinds of texture that are honestly very difficult to control. So just be prepared for it to be unpredictable and not knowing what you're going to get. Okay, for this project that I have here, I have these two pictures. Both of them have been painted one coat, obviously a very messy coat, of a black all-in-one paint. I believe it was coal black or cast iron by Fusion, probably cast iron. I am going to paint one of them with that hotel robe and the other one with the creamy. So one with Fusion and one with Sweet Pickins. I began by painting the inside and the outside of this little jug, but I decided in the end to go back and paint the inside in the cast iron by Fusion and giving it a full coverage on the inside. I just felt like that looked a little bit better than the kind of uniqueness that I got from the milk paint. For this adorable little jug, it has already been painted in a chalk paint. I believe it was folk art, and it was a cottage white color, and it was mixed with a little bit of baking soda. So it already has some texture. I would like to see what will happen when we add some more texture with this very unique milk paint. So this is Silhouette by Fusion. And I'm going to cover it, giving it as much full coverage as I can, but then we're going to come back and do some other unique techniques. Here's a quick look at how this silhouette color dries down. This also gives you a good idea of what coverage looks like after one coat. I'm going to give this vase 2 good coats of this silhouette milk paint by Fusion. And after it dries, we're going to try a technique with a different color of milk paint. I mixed together what I left of hotel robe and silhouette and then watered it down a lot. I actually made sure that it was drippy enough that it would drip down my jug. And all I'm doing is pressing my chippy brush at the top and then allowing that paint to run down. So I don't want to like dab off any excess. This is kind of the opposite of that effect. You want a lot of extra paint on your brush for this technique. Here is Sweet Pickins in the color Denim. I have painted on 1 to 2 coats. It is dry, and now I'm taking a watered down Ocean, which is another Sweet Pickins paint color, and I'm doing a very similar technique to what you just saw. As you can see, there's not too much of a difference between the two paint lines as far as the chippiness, the effect, the texture, the color. The color is different, but I mean the actual, what is the pigment. They both provide very good coverage for what a milk paint is meant to do. It's important to remember that milk paint must be sealed. You can use wax, you can use a polyacrylic sealer. The typical recommendations, especially if you're going to use this milk paint, which is food safe, on a food safe surface, you are going to want to use tung oil or hemp oil, which is also food safe. I have yet to try that. I've only ever used the hemp oil on a project where I just did a laser cutting on raw wood, so I will have to show you that in another video. This is a clear wax that I am using to finish off this vase that we just did. Once sealed, you do have the flexibility to embellish your projects however you choose. Here is an example of using a stamp. Now I will say this stamp will end up looking very distressed, but because I have a very chippy and distressed looking picture here, it actually works out perfectly. This is an IOD stamp from the Antiquity stamp set and IOD black ink. And I am just very carefully placing it down and holding one hand down on the picture while pressing on the other side and then moving to the opposite side to do the same. I have that little yellow towel there under the handle of the pitcher to kind of keep my rounded pitcher level. Here is the other pitcher painted in Sweet Pickins creamy color, and I am just grabbing a transfer. It's an IOD transfer. I forget the set that it's from, but I am going to transfer that on and then add some gold embellishments around the rim after this has been sealed with a polyacrylic sealer. Remember those chunky risers we did earlier in this video? Well, here is the one that has been painted in Hotel Robe, and I took it out to my orbital sander and just sanded it down to kind of show you a different effect that you can get at with this milk paint. So it has a different, almost a variation of color, along with some of the chippiness and then some of the sanded down pieces all across the riser. I am sealing it with a polyacrylic sealer in a matte finish, and then added some transfers to embellish this one too. I also added transfers to the other riser that we did. However, I did not sand that one down. I left that one as is. When talking about price, both of these paint lines have a sample sizes that are almost exactly the same. Fusion at $6.99 and Sweet Pickins at $7. However, if you are going to order any of the bigger sizes, Sweet Pickins definitely has a better deal. I believe $18.50 is roughly the price of a pint versus Fusion's $27.99. So which one is better? Honestly, that's up to you. They both are really good quality milk paints. I've loved working with both of them. If you're looking at price, if you have a stockist that you prefer to work with or go to, then use that. Let me know in the comments, have you tried milk paint? And if so, what do you like or not like about it? I would love to know. Thanks so much for joining me today. I will see you again this Friday for the first Stash Switch Challenge of 2025.